My name is Jonathan Locke. I'm a product manager at R3, and I'm going to talk about the AWS HSM support which we've recently added to Core Enterprise 4.5. A bit of background before I begin. HSM refers to a hardware security module, which is a hardware-based cryptographic device which organizations can use to store their cryptographic keys. Core Enterprise was already compatible with several of the industry-leading HSMs, such as the Utomako Security Server SC Gen 2, Gemalto Luna, Futurex Vectera Plus, Azure Key Vault, and Securus Primus X. The types of keys that a Corda node could use that can be stored inside an HSM were legal identity and CA keys, TLS keys, confidential identity keys, and notary service keys. And it's important to note that the support that we've added for the AWS HSM is for all of those. So every key, every cryptographic key that a Corda node might use or might want to store can be stored inside an AWS HSM. The driver version that we support for the AWS HSM is 3.0.0. So I'll just talk through about what would be required to configure a Corda Enterprise node to work with an AWS HSM. So there are two changes that you'd have to make to the Corda Enterprise node. The first change is you can see that there's a configuration key named crypto service name which has been added, and it has the value AWS Cloud. That string should appear exactly as is in order for Corda to know that it is configured to work with an AWS HSM. The second configuration key that you'd need to add is crypto service conf, which should be pointing to the location of the configuration file that stores the configuration values necessary for your AWS HSM. And below you can see the contents of that file. So aws_cloud.conf is the example configuration file that we're using here. And the contents of that file, as you can see below, there are a username, password, and partition. All three of these values will be obtained when you do the setup of the AWS HSM itself. So once the setup is performed, those values can then be obtained and they can be stored here, and that will be how Corda will then be able to log into the correct HSM partition. Some more notes on configuring a Corda Enterprise node to use an AWS HSM. You would need to download the correct driver file from the AWS Cloud HSM software library, and the driver file that is needed is cloud HSM-3.0.0.jar. And this file needs to be placed inside the drivers subfolder of the node's main folder. If the drivers folder doesn't already exist, it should be created. And then when you run Corda, you need to specify a system property named driver.library.path, and that should be pointing to the location of the AWS Cloud HSM JCA provider binaries. For example, libkvm_jca.so for a Linux operating system. An example command line for running a Corda node on Linux would be, or on a particular Linux distribution where the AWS HSM libraries are stored in opt/cloud HSM/lib is seen below. So as you can see, the system property java.library.path is pointing to opt/cloud HSM/lib, which is the location of the AWS Cloud HSM JCA provider binaries. And the last thing to note is how to configure confidential identities inside an AWS HSM. Just bear in mind that this is optional. It's only required if you are making use, if your node is running a Corda app that uses confidential identities, and if you'd like those confidential identity keys to be stored inside the AWS HSM. So there is an example configuration sample below. This configuration sample would need to be inserted into the node's configuration file. And as you can see, similar to the previous slide, you would need the crypto service name to be specified as AWS Cloud, and you need crypto service conf to point to the location of your AWS configuration file. This can be the same as the previous as the other value. It doesn't necessarily need to be a different configuration file. This could be the case if you are using using an AWS HSM for both the legal identity and CA keys, TLS keys, as well as the confidential identity keys. The way in which this operates is that a master key would be generated. This master key is stored inside the AWS HSM, and it is used to encrypt the confidential identity keys such that they cannot be decrypted outside of the AWS HSM, so they are fully secure. And that is it. All of the information contained in this slideshow is present inside the documentation. If you'd like more information on how to configure and operate an AWS HSM, I recommend reading the Core Enterprise documentation. Thank you.